boleh tell me ya?
My name is Muhammad Faiz Ramji, and I'm a lecturer from the Fundamental Studies Center for Fundamental Studies at MSU. A little bit on my background. I graduated from University of Malaya on my degree levels, and then I finished with my degree. I further my study on master's level. Actually, I have two masters, double masters, and then the first master was on political sciences, the second one on international relations. And then I just finished with my PhD studies, just in the April, just finished with my PhD studies. That one also on international relations. So basically my forte is more on human security and also international relations.
So my name is Ifa. I'm a licensed counselor, and yeah, I work with people and to with psychological issues, and really just to improve our ability to live our day-to-day lives a bit better. And I mean, no one has it perfect and easy, so that's what I look forward to do when I do what I do.
The tension between the Palestinians and the Israeli Zionists can be felt by all people who watch the news. Throughout this documentary titled Freedom in Islam can reveal the beauty of Islam in safeguarding human rights. We will bring two main individuals to discuss regarding this issue.
Okay, that is actually an interesting topic to discuss, because this is one ongoing conflict that is still happening up until now, and in the nearest time I don't think that we have solution for that. But then if you want to recall back through history, the conflict of Israel and also Palestine started in the early years actually, but then some of the historians say that it started in 1948. Okay, in 1948 actually one community of people called as the Jewish at that time, coming from Europe, and then try to claim the land in Palestine. Okay, because of the historical factor, actually, some of the Jewish at that time think that part of land in Palestine was totally theirs. But then again, as a Palestine, they said that of course the land is owned to them, and then one main reason why the conflict is still happening is because of the United Nations. Most of the people didn't know, and they don't relate this to United Nations, but actually United Nations failed to differentiate between those land of Jewish people and land of Palestine. They doesn't have any solid reason or proof regarding that land. That's why up until now, Israel claim more than half of the Palestine land, and then the Palestine people keep on decreasing in terms of their land and owner of the lands.
Yeah, I think like our views on wars really are similar, because I think that wars are actually started from not just families but individuals, right? Conflicts start from inner conflicts, right? So when we have conflicts inside us that make it hard for us to accept ourselves, for example, right? And then we might try to resolve it in ways that are destructive. So that's when we might see like the war as we typically know it as the only solution. And that's because we don't have the skills or the capacity to just really process and understand. So when we can't understand, there's misunderstanding, and then misunderstanding leads to wars, right?
Yeah, it is related, memang closely related actually, in terms of international and also one other thing just now, political and also in terms of international relation. If you neglect the words of freedom or human right, it will totally affect the political system and also international relation. I take one example. Okay, in the case of Myanmar towards the Rohingyas. Okay, in the case of Myanmar towards the Rohingyas, what happened in this particular incident was when the government of Myanmar did not approve the process of assimilation towards the Rohingya peoples. So when the government used their military to go against the Rohingya people, which is they push away the Rohingya people to get out from that country through genocide and burning down their houses, kill them, it will affect in terms of freedom of human right. And then it will brought back towards the concept of international relation, and also it will affect in terms of political. Why is it? Because United Nations especially will condemn. Okay, will condemn Myanmar regarding what the government of Myanmar currently doing. So they go against the Rohingya peoples, and then the United Nations started to at first they give like emergency helps to the Rohingya peoples, but then they give warning letters to Myanmar people. So when United Nations, especially that such a big organization, give you warning letters or warning towards the people's human right, this will bring back towards the political or international relations. Okay, when government of Myanmar did not want to follow the rules by the United Nations, which is the genocide thing, this will impact the relationship between the United Nations. Also, some of the other country towards Myanmar, which did not agree on what Myanmar did just now towards the Rohingya peoples. So, in terms of international relation, it will affect the relationship between Myanmar countries toward other countries, and then in terms of political system also it will affect in terms of political diplomatic relationship between Myanmar and United Nations, right?
It's actually unnecessary, but it's a consequence of like what happens when we do not when we do not know how to resolve our own not resolve when we feel like like Alfred Adler said, right? Basically a sense of inferiority, like when we do not have a stable sense of self, right? It's related to narcissism also, like when we feel like we need to dominate others and put others down to get what we want, for example, right? That's why people exploit resources, and that's related to grandiose narcissism, for example, right? We need to do that in order to get a sense of power. So all of that also stems, yes, of course, like you can say people want to get those things for themselves, but the cara, right, the way is also
Wrong.
Maybe it's learned, maybe it's also, it's a mix of everything, right? Usually in psychology, it's like you model the behavior and everything, but it's also from a sense of inferiority. I think I just want to highlight that. And Alfred Adler actually talks about this. I'm going to quote him word by word now. He said that when some individuals seek these solutions, and these solutions to help decrease the sense of inferiority, and the young man who murdered the Austrian heir to the throne, this was during the war times, actually were individuals who were at odds with themselves. The crowds which subsequently clamored for war as a solution, and still larger crowds which accepted war as a solution, were all individuals who were at odds with themselves. So he kept mentioning people who are at odds with themselves. What does this mean? It just means that we are out of touch with ourselves, with our emotions, with maybe these people all, actually you can put it simply like we don't have confidence, and we try to look for a false kind of confidence, right, in the sense of like when we can put others down and feel better about ourselves. And actually that's what war starts with also. It's like a form of bullying, right? It starts at home, it starts at schools, and all these people who go unchecked, when these people practice their self-esteem, they practice their defense mechanism to protect their not good feeling about themselves by putting others down, by doing that, and that doesn't go unchecked. That leads to a whole society being like very not there for each other. Maybe we're not there for each other. For example, same with mental health, right? That's why we shame each other, and we reject each other, and yeah, and to feel better about ourselves. So yeah.
Okay, so basically, if you say about freedom or human right in the context of Palestine and Israel war, the main, I think the main reason that it keep happening is because there is no such law or one particular law that abide the Israeli troops, especially, to go against the Palestinian. Okay, we doesn't have one clear guideline on that, and then most of the people, especially the local people of Palestine, they have been told to leave the country. And then in terms of human right and freedom, they doesn't have that in particular. Now, up until now, actually, for those Palestinians, their right of citizenship, their right of owning a house, their right of owning the land also been affected because of the military and also troops and also war in terms of Palestine and Israel. So what can I conclude here is that in terms of freedom and human right itself in the context of Israeli and Palestinian, most of the Palestinian actually is the one who got affected in terms of human right. And then Israeli, of course, Israel under the government of Israel itself always go against the concept of human right. Even though they are championing against the other countries, they say that, of course, we need to go through human right in terms of everything. But then at the end of the day, in terms of Palestinian people, they always cross the line in terms of human right.
Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, he says, for many people, the war begins at home. Each year, about 3 million children in the United States are reported as victims of child abuse and neglect. 1 million of these cases are serious and credible enough to force local child protective services or the courts to take action. In other words, for every soldier who serves in a war zone abroad, there are 10 children who are endangered in their own homes. This is particularly tragic since it is very difficult for growing children to recover when the source of terror and pain is not enemy combatants but their own caretakers. So, okay, maybe it's a bit off topic, but yeah, to say that maybe one can say is like to shed light also on the fact that war is also, it's more of a, we always think of war as, like all those political wars, but actually the things that happen at schools and at home are also forms of wars that actually result in same kinds of symptoms, right, in terms of like mental health symptoms, but also that the underlying causes are the same. Like, I think when people don't have their needs met and they generally feel unsatisfied with their lives, and they develop a sense of like a sense of self, and that is not so like that they need to do something so great to put others down to get what they want for themselves and themselves only, and they lack that social interest, is what Alfred Adler talks about, and they need to sort of go out and say that I'm the best, and I will do what it takes to get what I want, and that's all that matters. All of everybody else does not matter, right? So I think the root is actually the same. That's the beauty, actually. Human rights is something that I think, how to say, it is something that is obviously matters. Like, I shouldn't even have to say it, but I think maybe the difficult part is that, it's that we don't actually, like, I think it's a hard truth to accept, right? That when we think of like race, class, gender, there's a double standard. There is definitely that. Even if we don't say it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Which is that we discriminate in terms of rights. Like, for example, you want to take something that is less like not as maybe obviously catastrophic as wars, but is equally like insidious. It's like we think like women don't really have as much right as men to I'm not sure if this applies. I think it should apply to most countries, but as much right as men to pursue their careers, right? Or for example, like similar for men, or if let's say if your children, they are being seen as a different, less masculine kind of man, they say they want to take paternity, for example. So this is just another example of rights based on gender, right? And so that is an example where actually we created all these like norms that make us in a way deprive people based on their gender what they can or cannot do, and that regulates people's behaviors and also satisfaction in their life. But I guess in the end it's like we choice but to fight for our rights if we want to, if we feel like our rights is like not being advocated for. That's the importance of self-advocacy. I think it is also a skill that has been researched a lot. Yeah, like for example, like our not just like our rights as a gender-wise, but like when you're at a workplace, like if you're being if you're being treated badly, you have to know your rights and how you can like stand up for yourself. And then learning assertiveness skills also can be learned in a context of therapy, like to practice how you were to talk to someone. Yeah. From my understanding, like of course that question is also quite general, right? But I think when our rights are being denied, what that actually, a simple way to understand it is our needs are also being deprived, I think. So it's like and I think a lot of the ways that psychologists view human well-being is that when our needs are not being met, that's when like our psychological well-being is affected, right? So maybe the key is to see when you ask like what will happen, right? It's like, oh, when we deny this right, which need is unmet, and that will result in what? For example, right? So like let's go back to example of, I'm sure it's the same example, education, right? In Pakistan, for example, and like with the Taliban, right? So it's like that need. So that goes back. That right ties in with the need for accomplishment, for autonomy, for personal fulfillment that all humans have, and so the right and the need for a sense of freedom also, and also actually school education meets a lot of needs actually. So when that right is denied, that many needs are deprived. Okay, so like when you go to school, you also meet people and there's a sense of community. So when there's no education, that right is taken away. The need for a sense of belonging is also not met. So there's so many things. I understand that in a lot of countries also, like school can be a place where they get fed, right, by the government, like in a lot of poorer countries. So a lot of needs can be met by a school system, but let's say that right is deprived, all those needs are not met. Like for basic education, find the sense of accomplishment and purpose, that's not met, and then sense of belonging, to be with a lot of people and feel accepted in the community, that's also not met. And then the need for like basic supplies and food, maybe usually sponsored by government to children through schools, that's not met. And the sense of play and freedom, that maybe if you can't, where else can you meet but at school, right? So many, for example, I think this may be a good example that, like, when education is deprived, then all these things are met. And how it will affect is that a lot of the development is stunted, not just cognitive, for example, for education, right? But when you play, you actually develop a lot of social-emotional skills, how to also relate to other children, right? How to exist in community and just develop that, also what Alfred Adler talks about, like social interest, a sense of community-mindedness, to care about other people.
As I mentioned earlier, actually, in terms of the case of Palestine and Israel, there is actually no solution, no nearest solution at all. But then I will say two things that can prevent this kind of war to be keep on going. I think the first, the United Nations need to apply a new rules towards Israeli troops. Okay, as we all know nowadays, if you want to compare Israeli troops towards the Palestinian troops, it's uncomparable, which means that Israeli under Tel Aviv, of course, they have this moderate weapons, so on and so forth. Okay, so United Nations need to push Israel in this manner. United Nations need to push Israel. Let's say after this, Israel keep on going go against the Palestinian people, they need to make a clear rule on that. Okay, let's say like they need to stop doing business in terms of economic regarding United Nations countries toward Israel. Okay, but then yeah, I know it is hard, but it's not possible to happen. That is the first thing. The second one I think would be OIC. Okay, our Islamic organization, a country is Islamic countries, and the OIC should be together. They should be together, and then we should push Israel in terms of economic relationship. Okay, in this new world, the only way you want to stop war is through you need one clear line, okay, to differentiate between our economy and also theirs economy. So the best way is to stop doing business or in terms of international relation with Israel. Let's say under under OIC itself, we have more than 40 countries, Islamic countries. All of these Islamic countries, let's say we boycott the product from Israeli, I think it shouldn't be any problem, and it will benefit towards the Palestinian people, and at the same time, I think maybe in terms of war it will be reduced. I will not say it will end. Okay, of course it's hard to end the war between Palestinians and also Israelis, but then maybe we can reduce in terms of the war itself.
It's quite related to PTSD. Like if they experience, right. So it's not like just that they are deprived of certain rights, but they're also being, so it's like not just neglect, but they're also being bombarded with all these very overwhelming experiences. Like maybe they have to leave their home country, and have to readjust to another country, and also they have to watch people that they love die, right? For example, so a lot of these traumatic and stressful experiences, and so the effects on them is definitely very clear. I think it's very well documented. When you ask what's the effects, it's really, I think it's standard PTSD symptoms, right? And if I want to make it clearer, I would say the overwhelming sense of helplessness. I think that's a major thing. Also, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk talks a lot about that. So when it comes to trauma, it's like you're super shocked. You're super, like you feel really, yes, you might develop depression also, but first, a more characteristic feature is that sense of helplessness, that super intense fight or flight state, being pulled to the max, and you're not sure. It's hard to regulate it, and it's like that's why it's a lot of trauma experts say it's a very physical reaction, not only a mental one. So it's like that's why a lot of them also recommend like somatic therapy. So it's like somatic is like body based. So because of the effect on the body, and it's like that's why you see a lot of people not just developing psychological issues, but also ones that are somaticized, right? Meaning that the effects on the body, the effect of trauma. So like maybe they suddenly can't walk, or they can't talk, or some even just a sense of like maybe they just stare into space, right? Maybe for a while until they get treatment. So sort of like super flight, fight, or freeze kind of mode. So it's like, how do you get people to get back in? Because I think it's a defense mechanism. It's just a defense mechanism. Like you're trying to escape the horror, right? So the horror is like, even though yes, you may be away from it, but then it keeps replaying in your head, in the form of memories and images. Like we can't just forget it, right? Same with like if other kind of memories, if not war memories that are painful. So how do you like deal with those memories, those painful memories that live on not just in your mind but in your body, that make you feel like really overwhelmed, and like also leave you feeling quite like feeling like super detached from other human beings. That's why there's also I think for trauma victims there's also a sense of like super isolation from other people, that yeah, helplessness, isolation. Yeah, those two things, and the sense of mistrust as well. And so, like, it's hard to go back to living, integrating with society. I think this is also what people say about war veterans, right? Especially a lot of the research done in the US is like they feel most comfortable around their own people, even when they've come back from war, and like it's hard for them to just because that's their community lah. But which is good, they have that community of people who understand them and understand each other. But it's like it can never really quite feel like normal again, like like they belong to like they feel like that part of them cannot be understood because it has formed so much of their experience, of their identity. So it's like it's hard, I guess, but I think one of the ways is to just slowly develop a sense of like you are here now. That's why I talked about mindfulness also last time, right? Because like that can help actually to just keep bringing your mind back to the present moment. Every time you get flashbacks, right? Every time you get, I think that's one of the symptoms of PTSD. So like to bring yourself back to the present moment, everything is okay now. You don't, you are in a safe place. So just remind yourself that and take deep breaths, right? Because the breath helps with the impact of trauma on the body to ground you. I'm not sure if all countries in all the war zones they have like counselors and psychologists are being deployed, but I know that in some there are, like especially to work with children because they are one of the most vulnerable groups. So I've seen before, like in the media, in magazines, that they send psychologists to these Arab nations and to help children especially. But I'm not sure about like if it's all the countries, that would definitely be helpful, and because these children will go on to and then adolescence is yet another period of development that will definitely be impacted by those early experiences that they had during the wartime. And like if they can get help before adolescence, which is like a very quite turbulent time, right? Because our brain is like really pruning and like developing, and it's like the earlier experiences might make people make not so good choices during adolescence, like like joining the wrong groups, taking substances. So yeah, so maybe if anything, like definitely I hope the psychologists are being sent to help, especially the younger kids. Yeah.
For me, living in freedom is a gift from God to us, because from this we can do work, having fun with family, friends, and not to be oppressed like in the past. Definition of Islam is, for me, freedom in Islam is term of choosing one religion and not being forced to choose Islam as their religion. And in my knowledge, Islam gives give freedom for everyone to give their own opinion, and even encourage to give their opinion in a meeting.
Kebebasan dalam Islam berarti manusia itu bebas beragama, manusia itu bebas melakukan perbuatan masing-masing, manusia itu bebas melakukan hak masing-masing, bebas untuk menyatakan pendapat, kebebasan berpolitik dan juga kebebasan ekonomi. Jadi, tetapi kebebasan dalam Islam ini terhad dan terikat. Walhal dari kontranya, demokrasi liberal ialah kebebasan tanpa batas. Dalam Islam, kebebasan kita terbatas mengikut syariat Islam, iaitu akidah kita teguh kepada Allah dan menjauhi segala larangannya.
In Malaysia, we have lived in harmony since 1957 with multi-races. And Islam is our official religion for our country. We accept the freedom to have our own religion, food for our leaders, and voice our opinions. As a conclusion, we must maintain harmony in the Muslim community and multi-racial or multi-religious areas in our country. The best freedom to have is freedom with Islam.